Hi, everyone, and thank you for listening to another episode of Visibility Era, the podcast. Today, we have a dear friend of Visibility on Purpose. This is Sabrina Greer. She is a best-selling author, an international publisher, motivational speaker, and business coach to creative entrepreneurs. She's also the CEO and visionary behind fEMPOWER Publication Inc., a publishing house for female thought leaders. As a survivor of the beauty industry and a fashion model in recovery, Sabrina is passionate about positive body image advocacy, empowering women's self-worth by freeing their voices. Sabrina, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. It's always so funny when people read my bio. I'm like, oh, yes.
Well, I
Okay. I
learned
forgot that.
something I learned something new today. I mean, I know that we kind of touched on the beauty industry and the fashion model side, but I really want to talk about that today because this is
Mhm.
such a relatable conversation. And then obviously we'll get into like the publishing house and all of that, but it's such a relatable conversation. And I think when we're thinking about who we want to work with, we really want to also kind of get to know somebody. It's those relatable things that make us really stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about your background and maybe how you worked your way to
Okay.
publishing?
How far back do we want to go? It's one of those things where we always see it, the iceberg of entrepreneurship and, the path is never a straight line and all of those
Yeah.
things. But I really like to see like the breadcrumbs that got me to where I am today and how
Mhm.
it's all connected. Instead of being like, whoa, that's so left field, it's like, no, it's actually all connected. So it's funny because, my parents moved to a small town from the city when I was a tween. And my goal, like full tunnel vision, get out, get out of the small town. You're a city girl, that's your dream, that's your thing. So modeling was very desirable at that time. And I ended up traveling the world, living in Asia. I lived in Taiwan and Japan and Hong Kong and all over the place. And then it was Europe and then it was South Africa. And that was sort of my life for about a decade. And of course, during that decade, a lot goes on behind the curtains of the fashion industry, which is why I use terms like a survivor of the fashion industry and a model in
Yeah.
recovery, because both of those things come with a lot of smoke and mirrors, which is what my book is called, coming out this September. And it
Oh, I'm
really is
excited.
about that, right? It's about the not just the modeling industry, not just the fashion and all of that, but being a woman in modern day, being a business owner, being an author, being a thought leader, being a speaker, all of these things sort of come with their own smoke and mirrors. I mean, being in PR, there's a lot of that out there. So that's really what my book is about. So yeah, I after 10 years of that, I came back and they told me I was too old to model anymore because I was a ripe age of like 23 years old when all that
Yeah.
happened. It's very old, very, very old. They're like, yeah, you're all washed up. You're going to be doing, anti-aging creams and, adult diaper ads very soon. So no room for you anymore in this industry. So I actually went back to school and I got a degree in developmental psychology. And so you're seeing a theme here, a trend, like nothing to do with publishing. So it's one of those things where I believe that everything I've lived and everything I've survived in this life has brought me exactly to where I'm supposed to be, which is now helping women free their voice and share their voice on a global scale through published books. So I fell into publishing very organically. I actually published my first book with, I won't get into all the publishing modalities, but I published my first book in 2016 when I was pregnant with my third son. And then I started working with that publisher and had a little bit of a falling out, a creative difference, I like to call it. But it was also a big wake up call, how the industry works with intellectual property rights and just all of the things, creative differences, and what that looks like. So I ended up self publishing after a long journey, self publishing the same book series with my own imprint. And then people started coming to me saying, well, if you can do it for you, then why can't you do it for us? And that's how it all began. And I know you can't see behind me because it is a audio, but we've published over 400 women to date. through all kinds of beautiful nonfiction, personal development, and personal growth publications to inspire, empower, educate, and motivate. And that's
Oh,
what we do to this day.
thank you. If we'll post this on YouTube too, you should see
Okay,
the
great.
display of like stunning books behind you. I feel like your publishing house is just unmatched when it comes to the clients, the beautiful cover art. So you heard it here. But I don't know if you know this about me. I have a background in beauty PR and a little bit of fashion. So anyways, I'm
Oh,
like,
that's so
I
funny.
can relate to some of this, probably just, different avenues. But was there anything with your background? I know you mentioned that golden thread. That's what we like to call it, or Bridget and I call it that all the time. It's like the golden thread that like sewed everything together to where we are today. But was there anything that really stood out to you where you're like, I'm sure it was a lot of things, but whoa, I really needed to learn that so that I could help this type of entrepreneur, or I could do or create, this type of service for them.
Yeah, I think everything, everything. So, modeling sort of steered me into the realm of personal development,
Mhm.
and personal development steered me into psychology, and psychology steered me into, wanting to come up with a system and a process for people that made it approachable and safe.
Mm.
I find
Yeah.
that publishing is still very much convoluted in many ways, that, the industry, there's a lot of dark behind the curtain, smoke and mirror things going on in publishing too. And I really wanted to create a safe place where we publish women. That's why we're fEMPOWER publications. It's really about female empowerment. Obviously, that's a near and dear thing to my heart, having survived the modeling industry, because it's, there's unequal pay. There's a lot of mistreatment as far as women being treated as a commodity in that industry, which is, unfortunately still a problem even in 2024, which is insane. But it was a big problem when I was modeling. I won't age myself too drastically, but it was like late 90s, early 2000s, when there was like no social media or anything. So it's worse now, I think, because of social media and all of these things. So I have a mission. It's more than just a business. It's more than just, helping people. Like, I have a movement mission that I want to help women have a voice. And I think a really powerful way that I get to do that is through publishing their books, because their words, their work, their modalities, their theories, their coaching programs, whether it's, that type of nonfiction, or their stories, their
Mhm.
histories, their legacies, they get to put them on an international level. So
Yeah.
I just think the golden thread for me was really going first. And that's one of my top values in life and in business, is like, I go first.
Yeah.
I can't tell you or encourage you or share with you how to do something or how I did something if I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So I live it and breathe it and do it first. And I think that's what we're doing with my publishing house, is we're really disrupting the industry norms and creating a space that doesn't really exist in the industry. And that's because that's what I want. As
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
author first, this is how I want to experience my reality. And that's what we're offering to our authors.
Yeah, I love that. And to me, you are of the highest integrity. So it's just such a breath of fresh air because I have seen it. I've seen friends go through it and they have, not the best experiences. And you're going to a publisher with such a vulnerable thing, whether it be about your business or whether it be about an experience that you had. Either way, it's a vulnerable thing to put your baby and your work out there. So I totally agree. I would love to switch gears and talk about like the whole behind the scenes process.
Mhm.
Likely, if you haven't gone through this yourself, you have literally no idea what it looks like to be an author and to get a book self-published, or not self-published, but like to go through your publishing house. So when somebody comes to you, what kind of stage are they at? Are they at like a few different stages, or
Yeah.
do they have like, some paragraphs or maybe even a whole book and they're like, what do I do?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting question, because I think it's evolved since we began, right? People come to us at all different stages.
Mm.
And I like to think that we've now developed programs and services to meet people where they're at. So we say that we are a full service publishing concierge is our fancy way of naming what we do. But really, that's what we do. So if you come to us and you're like, I have a really good idea, we work with writing coaches and developmental editors, and there's programs and courses and things that you can take within our body of work that help you with that stage. If you're like, here's my done manuscript, I just need help with editing and publishing and all of the bits, I have a full-time team. We have 8 editors now on the team. I have a full-time editorial manager who manages that team because that's a lot of people for
Yeah.
just little old me to manage. And then we have a design team as well that does all of the layout and graphics. And then we work with PR people like yourselves. We partner with different, because obviously, PR is very unique as far as the niche of the author, because it's not just about being an author. It's about what's your business, what's your brand, what's
Yeah.
your point, who do you serve, and what do you sell outside of the book? Because as I'm sure you've talked about on this show, it's
Yeah.
never about the book. It's about the message, right? So, we work with different PR teams such as yourself, depending on the author and what their brand and their mission and their vision is.
Thank you. Yeah. So if a entrepreneur is coming to you and they have their book, what are the different ways that this book can support their business? I know from my PR perspective, but I'd love to hear like from your lens, what maybe your clients come to you for, what they're saying, what you're saying. It's just so interesting because I think it does so many things.
Absolutely. I always talk about the 4 C's. And this is
Mm.
something I coined a while back. I really like acronyms, and I like things to connect the dots. I'm a very visual person, so for me
Yeah.
it was like, oh, all of those things start with C, so I'm going to call it the 4 C's. But now C number 1 is catharsis. Who are we kidding? We're all healing from something, right?
Yeah.
And the journey of writing a book is honestly, and I've had my authors say, it's like 10 years of therapy. And I think this is the piece that's missing with a lot of different publishers. They don't focus on that part. So we have like I'm NLP certified. I have a degree in psychology. I'm not a
Yeah.
registered therapist or a psychologist or anything from a medical perspective, but I do think it supports my coaching because I'm also a coach, a business coach. So
Yeah.
when people come to me and they're like, "Oh, I think I have a book in me." It's like, "Okay, what do you need to heal first? Let's go through the story. Let's go through the background. Let's go through the stuff and see where you're at and how much support you need with this, with your mindset."
Mm.
Right? Because it's a lot to take on. It's funny that you mentioned the baby thing, because a lot of people call me the book doula. And
Yeah.
it's because like I really do support you on that intimate level as you're going through this like birthing process of bringing this into the world. This is your work. This is your legacy, your soul's work, right? It's a big deal. So I don't take it lightly. So catharsis is number 1. Number 2 is connection. So like connecting not just with your audience, but you're connecting with people on a global scale, right? As soon as you publish a book, it's available at 39,000 retailers, depending on how you publish it. Sometimes self-published, it's not the same, but
Right.
definitely it's available on Amazon, which is, as we know, like the world's largest book retailer / retailer of all things. You can literally
Yeah.
order like underwear and paper towel and a couple of
Yeah.
books all in one thing, and it's drop shipped to your door the next day, right? So everyone knows Amazon. But if you publish in a certain way, it's also available at 39,000 retailers around the globe.
Wow.
So you could be at a little bookstore in Thailand and somebody could pick up your book, right? So it's a global connector, right? So it's bigger picture thinking. And I think that's where so many people are like, oh, I have a book on my heart. And it's like, oh no, if you have a book on your heart, we're gonna take it far. But
Yeah.
like what are your goals? Like what do you actually want from this? And then that moves into the credibility piece, which is C number 3. Credibility is really, as this is where you come in, right? The PR part of things. Like a book gives you credibility regardless of what that book is about, because the message is what sells. So it's great that people can pick up your body of work for $20 on the internet, and it's an introduction. We call it a lead magnet or a connector. It puts your work out into the world. But the credibility behind that, oh, she's got a published book. Well, then I definitely need to hire her. That's it, right? So there's a huge credibility piece. People want to hire you to speak on stage because you're a globally recognized published author or best-selling author, or whatever title you wear within this process. And the last, but definitely not least, C is your contribution, your legacy. What do you want to leave behind, right? Like there's books that were published in the 30s and they're still on top 10 book lists today. Like this is your legacy. And I don't want, if you're an aspiring author, I don't want that to freak you out and be like, well, that's too much, too much pressure. Because I see that a lot where people are like, whoa, no, 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 no. Maybe I'll start a blog instead and my mom can read it and my friends up the street and I'll celebrate that. It is big picture thinking, right? If you're going to publish a book, it's a big freaking deal. And we need to treat it as such. So knowing that it's your legacy, which is why it hurts my heart when people cut corners. I've had people come to me and be like, I'm just going to use AI now to write this chapter. And then I'm going to, use spell check to edit it. And then
Don't
I'm
even
just
get me
gonna
started on
use
it.
Canva to design it. And then I'm just going to do my own PR. It's like, oh. So it's diluting the credibility piece. It's diluting the contribution piece. And with that goes a little bit of the integrity too, which also dilutes the catharsis. So that's a whole other episode, I think. I could go down the rabbit hole of like different types of publishing and like the do's and don'ts of what you should and shouldn't do, but I won't go there today.
It's funny that you're bringing up all of these different pieces. Number one, okay, I love the 4Cs. Those are like, yes, please. I feel like a Girl Scout right now. I'm like, on my honor, I will foresee. But I love that you brought this up because I was at this networking event this morning and people were asking about like, what's AI doing with like authenticity? And like the topic was a little different. We were talking about podcasts, but somebody brought up that they went to a podcast interview and they gave them a script that was AI. And they were like, yeah, I want you to talk about these things. They were like, I'm sorry, no, this doesn't align with my values. So I love that you said that because even as a publicist, what I've seen, and this is something that everybody should know, writers have mentioned to me, even like pitching clients, that some people are trying to use AI to submit interviews and they can see right through it because they're asking the questions, they're sending it off to brands and brands are using the same question, throwing it in ChatGPT. So obviously they're going to get the same answer and then everyone's going to send them the same answer. So no matter what, like, don't use AI if you were listening today. It, number one, dilutes everything, just like what Sabrina said. And why would you not do your soul's work justice? So
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm here
It's
with
one
you.
of those things, right? It's like, we have to conform with technology. I get it. And it is a tool.
Yeah.
And I'm not dissing AI. I think there's a time and a place. I think to use as
Yeah.
inspiration,
That's what,
great. Like
yep.
put in your prompts and be like, well, give me, 25 content ideas or whatever, or 25 chapter titles for a book about da, da, da. And then use that as inspiration, kind of like writing prompts, right? I
Yeah.
have all like some of the stuff that we've published. I have journals that are, writing prompts and, inspirational quotes and things like that. If you're using it in that context, it's one thing, but like to literally have AI write your book for you is, yeah. And then using other tools that are not professional. There's a very big difference, and we see it all the time, right? In quality, when you hire a professional to do a professional job and when you try to DIY it.
Yeah.
And I'm all for DIY on certain things. Like I'll figure out how to build a garden box in my yard and I'll
Yeah.
figure out how to, do things around the house and be more self-sufficient. But when it comes to professional, like it's your business, it's your brand, it's your book, it's your heart, it's your soul's work. It's important. It's your legacy.
Yeah.
Don't cut corners and use, you know, yes, these tools are there for a reason, but that's not the reason.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Used for very specific reasons, but for writing books, no, thank you. So, I know that you mentioned that it doesn't really matter what the topic of the book is. And I love that you said that because I was talking about personal branding the other day, and everyone thinks that everything needs to be like perfectly related to their business. And it like does, but it doesn't at all at the same time, because when you're a personal brand, there's a lot of pieces of you that you're able and allowed to show through. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, like how that conversation comes up and how you navigate it with your clients.
Yeah, well, I can't think of a better example to use but myself, because I'm literally going through it right now. So, and I love how you like rewind and quote yourself as the golden thread, right? It's like
Mm,
my book that's publishing in September is a memoir.
yeah.
How does a memoir support a publisher with her business? Great question. It's really, so I'm talking about things that are important to me, which is helping women share their story, helping, female thought leaders come out of their shell and be vulnerable. And all of that relates to publishing, because those are the types of books that we publish. So again, going back to going first, right? If I can say, oh yeah, I did a TED talk about, um, you know, the beauty standards and how AI is affecting, you know, even more so now than it used to, because it used to be Photoshop, right? Photoshop was the
Yeah.
AI of the past, and you had to be like a technician and really, really know what you were doing, because it was film photography. I'm really aging myself. There was no social media. It was
I
film
remember all of
photography.
these. I'm like, yes, yes.
I'm an 80s baby, so I'm like, okay, yep, I'm totally gonna throw myself under the bus here, but that's okay, because that's part of it. It's really, it was Photoshop. There was no social media. Like, it was a different time, but they'd still make my waist look smaller with Photoshop. They'd still change
Mm,
the color of my skin a couple notches. Oh, she's got green eyes. We want them blue. So boop, there you go. Changed. It was all smoke and mirrors. Now you can do that yourself on social media with the click of a button. So a lot of what I talk about on stage, a lot of what I present for my keynotes, and for like, I just pitched a bunch for TED Talks as well. So you'll be seeing that coming around pretty soon, but it's not about my publishing house. It's about my story and how I show up with my story. So I'm modeling, and not pun intended, I'm modeling the example that your story holds enough energy for you to show up, and your book just is a supporting tool for that. So whatever your business is, right? If you're sharing your own personal story vulnerably, if you're showing up and proof of concept, in a sense, that like whatever it is that you sell or do works, it doesn't have to be a 5 steps to, you know, do your own PR campaign as a book title. Like, that actually sells less than sharing a story about how you got to where you are and inspiring people. People want to work with real people.
mm-hmm. Yep.
They don't want to work with a robot, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I don't recommend writing your book with AI. It's the same way I don't recommend, like, you could write a book with AI that was like 5 steps to your PR campaign.
Yeah, but it's
But
gonna be like,
nobody else in the whole world has Lydia's story about how she got to this place that she's at and why people should want to work with you,
yeah,
Nobody.
exactly. And it's gonna, like you said, it's going to lack that human connection. And this is something that Bridget and I speak on a lot in Visibility on Purpose. And we're so happy that we have Pitch Party, affiliated with your brand as well, because we are in the same camp of human connection. Like a really juicy PR campaign is one that also tells a story. So we call it like a well-rounded press trail. So it's a lot of our clients are personal brands, but they don't always have to just sit in one lane and talk about their expertise. Like if they, like you mentioned, if they also like to talk about like female empowerment, that's really powerful to share from your perspective in the media, because if I'm shopping around for book publishers and I have a story that is really dear to my heart and it's about empowerment, and I hear your story, 150% am I coming to you first. So I love that you shared that. I think it's so beautiful and empowering. So thank you. And then can you just walk us through really quickly, or we can take a few minutes, what it would look like from if somebody were to come to you with an idea, and just kind of give us a roadmap of what you would recommend to do first?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many options out there, which is why it's so hard,
Okay.
right? I always talk about the different types of publishing. It's like,
Yeah.
so traditional publishing, the big ones, Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, like the ones that you've heard about.
Mhm.
Those are like the big five, as we call them. It's changing, right?
Yeah.
It used to be like, oh, you hire an agent, you do a book proposal, you hand in that book proposal, it's milled over time, and then they come to you with a publishing deal. Now you have to have a full marketing strategy, right? They're accepting fewer applications, like they're even charging money now for submissions. Like it's a whole different world now because
Wow.
self-publishing has made the industry very different. So
Mhm.
that's the other side of this. Like, I usually do like a visual where I use my hands, but I won't do that because you can't see me. But it's like a crevasse size gap between the two. But
Mm.
with self-publishing, the pros and cons are essentially one and the same. You have 100% control, and the internet is a deep, vast place of misinformation and contradictory information. So it's really hard to figure out. So it's like, you shouldn't have, I'm on all these writer forums too, which I really should leave because they're very frustrating and I just end up reading them and getting angry. But it's like, you shouldn't have to pay for publishing. You shouldn't have to pay for this and da da da. And like, that's where a lot of people say AI can edit now. Did you know that? And it's like, I want to rip my hair out. But,
Mm.
so when people come to me and they're like, I have an idea, we have lots of options internally, which is how
Yeah.
we do things differently, right? Because you can source people on the internet. You could find an editor, you could post in a group, say, I need an editor, I need this, I need that, da, 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 and you could easily patch quilt your experience. But that's what you're doing, you're patch quilting your experience. So the benefits of going with a traditional house are that it's all in-house. That's what makes it a publishing house. Everything is in-house. So that's what we do. We have traditional style publishing with a whole lot more heart and soul, where the author maintains their intellectual property rights, which is something that doesn't happen in the traditional publishing world. And they maintain 100% creative control. So that's the other sort of downside to traditional publishing is they're like, no, that doesn't sound right. Actually, you're going to have 4 kids instead of 3. It's like, but this is my personal story. I only have kids.
Oh
They're
my
like, yeah,
gosh.
but just for marketing's sake, you're going to have 4 today. Okay. So they change your story and then they own the rights to your story. So it's a very interesting place for an entrepreneur to be when you're publishing a nonfiction book that is your modality of teaching or your body of work that you're putting out in the world. So we do it differently. And like I said, we're disrupting the industry. There's really nothing else out there that exists. I guess if you were to compare us to something, we're hybrid publishing because
Yeah.
we do a bit of both, but we've actually trademarked the term blended. So we
Mm.
blend the best of self-publishing and traditional publishing, and we take the good parts of both and let go of the bad parts of both. I like
Yeah.
to think so anyway. Of course, stuff happens. It's a business, it's an industry. But if someone was to come to me with just an idea, we have in-house writing coaches. We have programs. We have a specific one for memoir, a specific one for nonfiction books. We only publish nonfiction books. So I
Mhm.
know some of these programs exist out there for fiction writers and different types of authors as well, but we only publish nonfiction personal growth and development books and tools. So yeah, they'd come to us. We'd stick them in one of our programs that's custom to what they're doing. And then the reason we call ourselves a full service publishing concierge is because you can really get whatever you need. We have developmental editors, structural editors, copy line editors, technical editors, proofreaders. We do a lot of the marketing prep and the launch prep to get it ready for someone like yourself to work with. We do all the production pieces. So, ISBN registration, copyright registration, which the author maintains. We do layout, design, distribution management, like all of the things that make authors go, their head explode and them like crying in the fetal position because it's a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And so we always say, like, we do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Could you find someone on the internet that's like affordable or, free or whatever? I'm sure. But that's what's diluting the industry, right? It's like people trying to patch quilt their experience to save a buck. And what oftentimes ends up happening is they spend double because they
Hmm.
have to redo it. And then what's your energy and time worth, right? So it really is one of those like balance metrics of trying to figure out. So it's hard. It's a hard industry because there's no straight line. There's no one size fits all method. Like it's very custom. And that's why when I think if I was to give anyone advice who's looking to publish a book, do your research, do your due diligence, and follow your intuition. What
Mm.
feels good? Trust that because
Yeah.
that's really all you can trust in this industry because there are so many smoke and mirrors and you just have to go with your gut.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I have a friend that is doing a children's book. And she was started messaging me because she knows I'm like kind of in this world. And she's like, hey, Lydia, like, this person's reaching out to me for illustration. Somebody saw that I'm like publishing a book and this publicist reached out. Do they do what you do? And it's like, it's like the wild, wild west, I feel like, with like people, there are a lot of amazing people like you, and then there's also a lot of people that are just trying to take advantage to make some money. And what I love about your publishing house is, of course, the integrity piece, but also the fact that you have all of these really vetted professionals within your house. So nobody needs to feel like they're not getting the best, editor or not getting the best illustrator. Like you have people in with you to really help. So whoever is listening and is thinking about writing a book, this is when you go to publishing houses like Sabrina's, you're really going there because you are getting the pre-vetted experts that make sense for you to work with. Do your clients, like, what do they say when they talk about this?
Yeah. Well, and they, that is the best experience because we do have a full-time team. I always tell
Yeah.
people, I say, yeah, you could go pick people off the internet and put your team together from Fiverr and Upwork, and those services exist, and some of them are really great. I'm not discrediting that, but I'm 8 years into my business now, and it's
Yeah.
taken a long time. We're a small team, but we're mighty, and it's taken a long time to, exactly as you said, vet those people. And when I find someone, I hold on to them. So we do have a full-time team. They're paid generously. They're all CIEP advanced certified. Our editors, that's like the governing body for editorial, whereas a lot of these people you find on the internet aren't. And that's fine. That's not to say they're not good editors. They're not qualified editors. That's all. That doesn't mean they're not good. They could be great. The other thing I want to say, when you hire an editor, if you're self-publishing and you hire an editor, that's one person.
Yep.
That's one person's opinion. That's one person's eyeballs. And they are a person, right? And even if you're using tools like AI or, online editing software and stuff like that, there's context, there's slang, there's like personality, like all of these little nuances that go into writing that make it feel like it's not robotic, that it's not written with AI, right? So you need a person to actually edit. So our team, like, there's no fewer than 3 editors that look at your book in the process. So we have a 5-tiered editorial process. It goes through multiple sets of eyes, multiple sets of editors, which I think is really important. And you could end up spending an absolute fortune doing that in the wild because, each editor that you hire independently will charge about the same amount. So you're getting, like, when you work with us, you're getting, 4 for the price of 1, essentially. So that's kind of a cool experience. Plus, we do advanced reader copies for, like, within our community, which are all, multi best-selling authors, and some of them are editors, some of them are coaches, some of them are poets, so they have a different spin on how they read, which I think is really important too. So if you're trying to save money, do not do it in editing, I think is what I'm saying. If you're trying to save money, do not cut corners in editing. and try to get as many human eyeballs on it as you can, even if they're not actual editors, because you're going to have blind spots. And so will your one human editor for sure.
Yeah, I love that you said that. It's so funny. Like, I write pitches all day long, but every once in a while, I'm like, I feel like this isn't reading right for whatever reason. And I'll have sometimes like Bridget read over something or my boyfriend, and my boyfriend knows nothing about PR, right? But I'm like, hey, does this make sense to you on the receiving end? Because I'm too close to it right now. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's great to have others look at it and other perspectives. So, gosh, I love that you said that. Sabrina, thank you so much for being here today. You are just, chef's kiss, as we like to say. We truly feel like writing books is such a big piece of anyone entering into their visibility era, if you will. It's such a beautiful authority piece. So can you tell us where everybody can find you? And if you have any last pieces that you'd like to share about publishing in books?
Absolutely. Okay, so the Sabrina Greer on Instagram, and I'm not really on any other platforms. Like that's where I hang out the most. So you can find me, and it's attached to all my businesses and all the things. So I won't bore you with a whole bunch of links.
And we'll have it
Really,
in the show notes.
yeah. When it comes to publishing, though, I think like so many things, people have overcomplicated it, right? It is complex and it's not easy to write a book. Like if I was to sit here and say, oh, it's great, it's easy, but it can be simple. It's about finding the right support. So, this isn't a shameless plug for my business, like genuinely wanting to help aspiring authors as an author myself first. Do not cut corners when it comes to editing. Find accountability people in your life, even if it's like another friend who's writing a book, people who get what you're doing, not your partner, not your best friend from high school, someone who's doing what you're doing, who's on that level of understanding, who can be your accountability buddy. Did you write your 500 words today? Okay, great. Keep in communication because that's going to keep you on track. And the third piece I think is really just like getting so crystal clear on your why. Why are you writing a book? Why is this important? Why is the message important? What are your goals as far as your own success? What does success look like and feel like in your body? Is it numbers of books sold? Is it stages that you're speaking on? Is it, what is it? Figure that out and have that plastered everywhere and share that with your accountability buddies so they can hold you to that.
Yeah, that's such a great piece. We say the same thing with all of your PR things, PR journeys. It's everyone has different goals. Like you may want to be on stages. Your goals maybe you want to have like a ton of logos. Maybe you want to be on a ton of podcasts. Maybe you want to, do whatever. It's really so unique to you and your business. So I love that you shared that. Sabrina, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Visibility Era, the podcast.